Hello and welcome to Two Car Pros. Today we're going to show you how to replace the fuel pump on a Ford Focus between the years of 1999 and 2007. The first thing we need to do is get underneath the vehicle safely. I have a link in the description for a great video on that, and we need to remove this bracket that holds the fuel lines. Next, we need to remove this fuel hose. Next, we need to remove this evap system. There's a lot of tubes and hoses and clamps and bolts that hold this thing together, so it's going to take you a little bit to get this evap system out, but just keep at it and eventually it will come out. It is absolutely necessary for removing the fuel tank in this vehicle. We have to remove this evap system in order to gain access to a couple of bolts that hold the tank up. Next, we can remove the hose that leads into the fuel tank and any other tubing that leads into the fuel tank itself. Now we need to drain the fuel tank, so we're going to take a length of tubing and insert it all the way into the bottom of the fuel tank. Next, we're going to need a gasoline-safe container and blow a pressurized stream of air past the tubing. This will create a vacuum in the tube and will drain the fuel tank. Please do not use your mouth to create the vacuum, as gasoline is dangerous to ingest. Once the fuel tank is drained, we can remove the tubing. Next, we need to disconnect this fuel line. Next, we need to remove this heat shielding. Here we use a transmission jack to put a bit of pressure on the tank to relieve tension off of the bolts themselves when we unbolt the tank. It also prevents it from plummeting to the floor once it's unbolted. Now we can unbolt the gas tank. Also, don't forget to unplug any electrical connectors leading into the gas tank or the fuel pump. Now we can lower it down safely and slowly. The first thing we need to do is grab some carburetor spray and clean the top side of the tank really well. You wouldn't want any dirt or road grime to get into your fuel tank. Next, we need to remove this fuel line. Next, we can remove the top of the fuel tank that contains the fuel pump assembly. So we're going to take a hammer and chisel and knock the lock until it lines up with the hole spacing, and then we can remove it. Next, we need to remove the fuel pump unit itself by squeezing the two tabs on the side of it and pulling it up and straight out. Next, we need to perform a visual inspection to ensure that no little pieces of debris or anything besides gas is inside the gas tank. Next, we need to compare our old fuel pump to our new one to make sure that it's identical. On the old fuel pump, the fuel screen was located here on the outside, but on this new unit, it's located on the inside. That's pretty common for updated parts, so no big deal there. Next, we need to attach our rubber float that came with our new fuel pump. Next, we need to remove the old O-ring seal that was there originally and replace it with our new one that we just got. Now we can replace our fuel pump by putting it back in place just as we did before, making sure that the fuel pump float is in there properly, and then we just slide it on in until we hear a really nice loud click and it doesn't come back out. Now we can reinstall the top plate like this. Next, we need to reinstall this fuel line. Now we can replace our gas tank. Now we can replug in our fuel pump like we unplugged before. We need to rehook up this fuel line that we removed earlier. We need to replace the heat shielding that we unbolted earlier. Next, we need to replace the fuel hoses that we removed. And now we can replace our evap canister. If this video has helped you at all, please give it a like. Basically, you're doing all the steps you removed earlier and just putting them back the way they go. So it's pretty simple. As long as you understand how to do it the front way, you can just do it the reverse way just as easily. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please visit c2carpros.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel.